Today we're looking at how to set up the medication system. So to do that, you navigate to Community, then Community Record, and you'll see the Setup drop down. Click on Setup, and then go to Medication and set up medication systems. I'm going to work my way from the top to the bottom on the setup form. The very first thing you see is the MAR grace period. If you click on this little question mark bubble, you'll see how far in the past will the system generate MAR entries in minutes, maximum of 90 minutes. You can see I've got the maximum here. What this means is if I were to enter in a med, I've got an example I'm going to show you here in a second. Say simvastatin was scheduled to be given at 8 a.m. and my computer right now is 12 noon, so it's way past 90 minutes. So because of that, because it's past the grace period, if I were to try and sign off on that med, well, if the staff are going to their regularly scheduled MAR, you'll notice that Jane, that I set up that 8 a.m. simvastatin, is not displaying here for any med to be given because it's way past due. It's 4 hours past due. But it will show up tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. But it's just a simple safety feature that it doesn't appear on the MAR because it's way past due until tomorrow. This next field allows you to turn on or off if you do not want the meds to be displayed on the MAR until a nurse actually reviews those medications. So if you don't have a nurse, that's why it's always defaulted to be turned off. And even if you do have a nurse, they usually have 72 hours to review a med, so most people do not have this turned on. If you do have some independent clients that maybe take all of their meds by themselves and you don't want the staff to sign off on those meds on the MAR, you can make those self-administered meds not showing up on the MAR. So what that means is if I were entering in a med, I come down to this section here, assistant needed, and click self-administer, and I type all the information and save it. This med will be part of this resident's record, but because I've turned off the self-administer feature on the system, it just makes it not show up on the MAR. So you need to be cautious about that. Some people usually have it show up on the MAR anyway, but that is a feature if you just do not want them to show up on the MAR. Same with family administered meds. If you have a family member for some reason coming in and doing that for you, maybe you don't want them to show up for that reason as well. They're defaulted to be turned off. If you're integrated with a pharmacy, sometimes the pharmacy software will allow you to order meds if you're getting low on, say, PRN meds. That's why we usually default only PRNs to be ordered because all of your other meds usually come through a cycle fill format that the pharmacy sends them once a month when they get low automatically. But PRNs, you don't know when those are going to get low, so that's what that button's turned on for. You also have a PRN interval. This allows you to lock a PRN if the staff, say, tries to sign off on a Tylenol and you can only give another Tylenol maybe 4 hours later. It's going to hide the staff signature and give a countdown on that saying you cannot give this until 4 p.m. or whatever time it is. And then it'll start displaying the staff signature for them to sign off on it after the 4-hour interval has expired. So it's a nice feature to turn on. This is obsolete, so I'm going to skip over this lock time. This is just allowing you to hold PRN meds with your regular meds. Usually if your client goes home with the family for the weekend, you want to hold all their meds, including the PRNs, so the staff won't be able to sign off on any med while they're away with their family or potentially at rehab. Whatever reason, it allows you to hold PRNs with the regularly scheduled meds. This medication lookup property, this is also easier to explain if I were to look at an actual med that I'm trying to enter into the system. If I typed in the brand name, which is Tylenol, it could also display other things in the title like the generic name. So if I scroll down here far enough, you'll see the generic name for Tylenol is acetaminophen. Well, if I go back to my setup, I probably wouldn't want to turn on all of these, so then my title is extremely long. It's going to show the strength in the title, the route, all that other stuff. So usually, if anything, you may want to show the brand name with the generic name, like our example, Tylenol and acetaminophen. I have another video that goes over in detail how to set up the medication count system, so we're going to skip over that and come on down here to MAR backdating. Backdating allows you to MAR backdate up to 7 days. This is a little bit confusing because we just told you here before we'll only allow you to go back 90 minutes. That's on a brand new med for the staff to sign off on it, but you actually can go up to 7 days. I'll use my example here again for the simvastatin that I entered. Because I entered it in today, I could actually say I actually started giving the simvastatin 7 days ago, so I can actually sign off on it by clicking on any one of these asterisks up to 7 days in the past. So again, I apologize, that's a little contradictory, but it does allow you to go back to 7 days. I typically turn off also the MAR link for the medication MAR link, and let me also show you how that would look on a staff's perspective. If I were to go here and I'm signing off on Jane Doe's AM meds, if the staff clicks on that, usually you just want them to sign off on the med by clicking the staff signature here and then saving it. We sometimes have this link turned on. If I had it turned on, I could actually click on this and it takes me actually to the medication. The problem with that sometimes is staff, instead of clicking their staff signature, especially if they're on their phone doing this, maybe they accidentally click this instead. It takes them to the actual medication where they'll accidentally sometimes discontinue that medication, which would not be good. So that's why we always usually turn off that medication link. There's no reason why the staff need to go to the actual med from the charting site. Making the diagnosis required is also usually state specific, but just by turning this on, anytime you enter any med, if I were to look at any med, for example, and come down here to the diagnosis, this would have an asterisk by it saying I need to enter in a diagnosis for any med that I am entering in. So I have that turned off as a default, but again, if you have that preference, you can always turn that on. This medication effectiveness, usually it's just PRNs that you're only worried about the effectiveness. So if I gave a pain med, I could chart the pain. Maybe it was at a 10 to start with, then the system could alert me 30 minutes later to go and see how effective that pain med was. Then the staff could document, now we're down to a 4 or 5, so therefore the pain medication was effective. This is also revolving around a pharmacy integration, so we're going to go ahead and skip that as well. We always hide the MRSA field. You usually won't have to deal with MRSA. If you don't know what that is, that's fine. It's usually a skilled nursing term that it's an infection that requires it's antibiotic resistant, and usually you won't be dealing with that in your settings. Now I'm going to come down to this configuration of medication times. Let me scroll over so you can see all the times here. So this is what's displaying when you enter in a med. You can see I've got all these general times turned on and then specific times as well as PRN. So if I go back to my medication example again, that just means when I'm scheduling a med, I see all of my scheduled times as my general times I turned on or the specific times as well as the PRN. So it's just, if I want to clean this up, if I don't want to see breakfast, I just use AM, PM, and bedtime, for example. I can turn off some of these things so they don't appear on the schedule. This section is drug forms. So you'll see also when you're entering in a medication, you have a drop down. I'm going to go back to my medication up here. And if the drug dosage form, you can see this drop down lists all of the things that I've got turned on in that system. So you can see I've got tablet and tablet chewable, but if for some reason I wanted to clean up that list and say turn off tablet chewable, it just removes it from the list. Or if I want to add some extra things on the list, I can just add it by clicking on this. Same thing here. This is the section for the route of administration. Again, if I go back to my example and scroll down here far enough, I'll see route of administration. This is just going to add or subtract from this drop-down list as well. And let me scroll back over here to the quantity unit section. This is just all associated with our medication count system. So if I go back to my example here, when I come down to this section here, this is just saying anytime I administer one, and I have to decide what type of a pill it is, one tablet of say 10 milligrams, whatever the dosage is, it's going to subtract that from my medication count. So that's just saying this is all of your quantity types that you typically would have. So usually we turn all of them on. I could turn this one on as well if we wanted to, but this next one is the drug category. So you can actually track medications by their category. You can see we've got them all turned on. The most important one I would say is if you're tracking pain, if I click on pain, you'll see it also comes with an extra field called pain tracking level. This is what we talked about before, where you could track the pre and post pain levels anytime you click on the pain. The rest of this sections are really not important to worry about. This is again located or integrated with a pharmacy integration. Same with these signatures down here. So after you've finished all of your changes or additions to that, you can just save that and it'll update your settings for when you're entering in new meds or charting, etc. And that's really all there is to that part of the setup. But I wanted to actually show you medication groups. This might be rare that you use this, but sometimes people will want to divide their home or into different types of medication groups. If you had a large enough home that had, say, multiple floors, maybe this is floor 1, floor 2, and floor 3, so that you're in one big giant building, but maybe you got 3 different stories and you want to make sure that your staff, if they're looking at floor 1, they're only going to be looking at those meds or those clients that exist on cart 1 or floor 1. So this is how you set up the groups. It's pretty straightforward. If I clicked a new entry, I would just see the name of the med group and then I would just save it. So that's how we did. And if you wanted to inactivate one of those, it's just as simple as clicking the inactive button. If I were to go to, I'm going to click over here to one of my clients, when you're entering in their record, you have the ability to define what group they belong to. This is a form that's displayed when you're actually entering in a brand new client. It's called the Resident Information and Vitals form. And you'll see under medication groups, it defaults to have no group selected, but if you wanted them to be in that cart 1 or whatever cart you wanted to put them on, you just select the cart, then you would save it on the bottom. So let me go ahead and do this for Jane Doe so you can see what happens. If I saved her in cart 1, oh, one other thing that I forgot to do, if I go back to that, she wasn't in any group before, so I put her in cart 1. I have to reset all of her meds to go to cart 1, so I'm going to do that as well. Now, if my staff were charting, and say in our example, you did have 3 floors and cart 1 was floor 1, and you only wanted to see cart 1 meds, you have a setting over here off to the right that I could say, just show me cart 1, and then I click done, and I'm only seeing the clients that would be on cart 1. And if I turn this over to say cart 2 or something else like that and click done, you'll notice that Jane Doe drops off my list because she's not in this group. All right. Let me actually come back and turn that on for Jane Doe and go back to my setup. So that's how you set up medication groups. And finally, there is a setting to set up MAR exceptions. So these would be things like when they refuse a med, the staff will be able to document they refused a med, and or if they're sleeping, or if the med's not available, whatever reason, you can put whatever reasons you want in here. We usually give you 4 or 5 default ones that are common, like refused or med on hold or medication unavailable. But we can also make it, or you can make it, so anytime they refuse a med, you can make the staff uh, chart a note on that. So right now there's no note required, but if I change that, I can say actually make a note required when they refuse the med. Now I don't have permissions in this login, but you will have permission if you're a community admin person to actually change that to say, yes, make that a note, just like we did with other here. So if I go back to my example here, show you in the real world how that might look, and I am charting a med for, we'll say, Jane Doe here, and she actually refuses that med. Right now, we don't have the note required, so you can see that's not happening, but you can see in my setup example, if I choose other, it's going to make that note required for me to put in whatever I needed to put in for my reason. And then they could sign it and save it. All right, and that is how to set up the medication system. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.